High in the Engadine Valley of the Swiss Alps, we're on the top of the world at St. Moritz, ready for the second of 4 heats of the Women's Bobsleigh World Championships for 2013. Hello everybody, I'm Martin Haven, sitting alongside me in the commentary booth here, Olympic silver medalist from Canada, Helen Upperton. And Helen, already 1 of 4 heats done, the battle lines are drawn up here.
It's a very close race. Our top 6 are separated by barely 0.2 of a second, and these sliding sports, bobsleigh, luge, and skeleton, they're determined by hundredths of a second. We're traveling 1,722 meters down this track. It's a lot of track to cover, and it's won in the blink of an eye.
Well, some of the fastest speeds on the track were set by Anja Schneider-Heinze of Germany. She drove down to 4th position. Top speed down at the bottom of the track, 142 kilometers an hour and change. That's over 88 miles an hour. She lies in 4th spot. And Helen, big start is vital for her game.
It is. The Germans have a bit of a start deficit. Alana Meyers in a silver medal position, and mostly due to her powerhouse start. She's the strongest starting team in the field. Katie Eberling behind her. They had a great run. Alana is a very, very new driver, and she's working on consistency, so we'll see if she can put it together for 3 more heats.
Well, in her run, she broke the start record and the track record, but it was not the fastest run of all. That went to our reigning world champion and our Olympic champion, your compatriot Kaylee Humphries. And again, you know, the whole package here works.
Yeah, she is right now the dominant force in women's bobsleigh. 6 gold medals so far this season. She hasn't missed the podium once, and she is definitely the favorite to be a defending world champion here in St. Moritz.
But you know, of all the 5 disciplines here, she is perhaps the most favourite of favourites. You know, in women's bobsleigh, I think everybody is looking to see whether Kaylee will do it, and they almost expect that she will. But you know, 4 heats is a lot to do, and the weather could change completely tomorrow and make all your choices very different. At the moment, though, as you said, Helen, top 5, top 6 covered by just a fraction over a quarter of a second. But then there's quite a gulf back to the next group of athletes, in which you find the Swiss, some of the US and Austrian, British crews as well. 22 crews, they'll all go into the second heat, and anybody who completes today safely can go into the first of our 2 heats tomorrow. Then the field will get cut down to just the fast 20 to go and shoot for the medal positions. And of course, it is a total time for all 4 runs, so if you're a second behind now, then you know it's about picking up the pieces from the table rather than shooting for the medals. Air temperature, -14 degrees. In the cold here, in the shade, it feels -14. Up on the bleachers in the sunshine, it feels about +8, +10. It's a very strange country, this.
And you see all these umbrellas set up. It's actually because some of the sleds are in the shade and some are in the sun. There's a control steel that's put outside. The runners have to be within a certain range or you're disqualified. So the sleds that are in the sun have to keep their runners in the shade. They put up all those umbrellas at the top.
Well, it's a major factor of life in St. Moritz. Everybody knows it, and yet inevitably every year somebody gets caught out with runners that are too... And the reason that the rule is because if you heat your runners like people used to in the old days, it melts the surface of the ice fractionally and reduces friction. Less friction, faster slide.
Exactly, and that's also the reason why the start position in St. Moritz is probably more important than any other venue. It's very unique here. Typically in races, you want to go off early. The fastest sleds will be early off as the track breaks down. And here in St. Moritz, due to the temperature, the type of track it is, no concrete base, it gets faster as the day goes on with the sun on the track.
Well, you see our 22 athletes. 22nd in the first heat was Romania's Oana Diacanu. She will go off in 22nd place because we go in the second heat 20 down to 1, and then after the top 20, the remainder of the field go in the order in which they completed their first heat, so 21 and 22 in this case. So we will see them after our race leader has completed the runs. At least that's what it says on my start list. So the first of our athletes at the top of the track, just to add to the confusion, is also in a Romanian suit, or the first pair. And this is Maria Constantin, 21-year-old student from Bucharest, with her brakewoman, who is just 19 years old, Andreea Grecu. And these two have some of the broadest smiles you will ever see in athletic sports. Romania, formerly a major force in bobsledding in the 30s, 40s, 50s. but they have really started from scratch again since the fall of the Ceausescu regime.
Little trouble from the brakeman getting into the sled. She was almost into that first kink. You really want to make sure that you're still and stable. She's having some trouble here. You cannot hit the walls through those straight sections heading into this wall curve. Those long straightaways are very, very important here to build speed.
Well, the ice, Helen, here is really cold. I mean, minus 14 degrees. This is like glass. Compared to most other tracks, would be -3, -4. The runners just skid everywhere.
Yeah, into the horseshoe curve, a bit of a bump into telephone. She was high a little bit too late in that horseshoe curve. 103.1 kilometers an hour. The fastest we saw in the first heat was 105, above 105 kilometers an hour.
Well, she's going a little quicker than in her first run. First run, 137.9. Ooh, little tap on the fastest part of the track, 137.5. This is not quite as neat and tidy a run. And again, Helen, she's driven down the track once this morning. That was over an hour and a half ago. Conditions have changed.
Definitely.
It'll feel very different.
Yeah, and as we mentioned, the track speeds up over the course of the day. She was one of the first sleds off in the first heat. We should have seen a big increase in her downtime. It's very typical of the track here in St. Moritz.
She was the fourth sled off. That's a little slower than her first heat, but we saw the reasons very clearly for that.
And it was mostly due to the mistake out of the first kink, out of the second kink. You can see her here brushing the walls. She's trying to correct with the runner. She's bouncing back and forth. Any time and any velocity you have at the start is just completely ruined by hitting those walls. High line out of Portico. Bump as she crosses the finish line.
Great woman hauls on the handles, dig those teeth into the ice. And there is Andrea, the brake woman. They're going to weigh the sled and the athletes as well to make sure they don't exceed the maximum weight limit. Next up, Victoria Ole from the UK. Kelly Denyer on the back of the GB sled. Now the first of 3 Great British teams that we'll see. Lots of noise at the top of the track from their male and female counterparts.
5:73 was their first heat push time. They were a little bit faster, 200s faster, and a good steer around the first kink, nice and straight. Having said that, mistake out of the second kink. She brushes the wall but manages to correct.
Well, these are rounded runners. They're not square edge like a hockey skate or an ice skate, but when you get them sideways, they still have a braking effect.
They definitely do. You have to stay straight down these straightaways. St. Moritz is a very important track to stay off the walls and be very parallel.
Well, again, watching some footage of the old days, never mind the 50s and the 60s, even in the 80s, they're still tapping left, right, and center. It was a very much rougher track then.
She's still in the lead above the Romanian sled.
103.6, a little quicker than her first run.
Nice parallel line. She's over a second ahead of the other team.
She should be up into the 140 kilometer an hour mark. This is 3 good corners in a row. 139.3, actually exactly the same speed as on her last run, although it's a quicker heat.
Nice bottom portion of the track from this British pilot.
109.43, her first heat. 109.43. Consistency is key here.
It is. That's actually quite surprising to see the time be the same. These sleds that were off earlier in the first heat, we would expect to see a bigger increase in their velocity, in their downtimes because of the sun on the track. You can see this really high line. Nice timing coming out of horseshoe. Good entry into telephone corner. Horseshoe is what builds the speed in the bottom portion of the track. These are such great pictures of the height that you get in this corner. It's all about pressure and physics and gravity in bobsleigh.
Next up from Canada, Jennifer Cicchetti and Kate O'Brien. Cicchetti won the World Championship on the back of Kaylee Humphrey's sled in Lake Placid last February, and then returns to the driving seat to continue her experience as a pilot. This is her first World Championship driving.
Yeah, Jenny's definitely one of the fastest pushing pilots in the field, but a very inexperienced driver. You can see how quick Kate loads into the sled and gets in and down as they head into the first kink. Goal is to keep it nice and straight and off those walls. 53.3 kilometers an hour is very good velocity.
You can see the tracks left by the other sleds, and of course that just polishes the ice to make it faster and faster.
This is interesting. The first 3 sleds we've seen in this heat have all hit the left wall coming out of that second kink.
Where they didn't the first heat. Yeah, very interesting.
Jenny had a bit of a bumpy first run. She's going to be looking to clean that up for the second heat here and try to move up a few spots.
She's already got more momentum off a fractionally slower start, and that shows that the track is allowing the sled to run freer.
Yeah, she had a bit of a lower line in Horseshoe, which we saw in the first heat as well, 103.0 kilometers an hour.
102.5 in the first heat. She was 139.2 at the bottom. And Helen, these 4 consecutive right-handers are so important for speed.
Missed the steer in that bridge corner there, brushed the right wall.
Slower than heat 1. So her gap will come down from 1600s to maybe a 10th, 1300s over Vicky Ole on the left and Kelly Denyer on the right.
I think Jenny had a better top portion of the track and a little bit of a bumpier lower portion of the track, is why her speed at the bottom was a little bit slower than the first run.
This is almost like a single lap qualifier at Indianapolis. If you like, you get one chance to get this right, and then you think about it overnight if you don't.
Yeah, the World Championships and the Olympic Games are unique to bobsleigh. It's a 4-heat competition. You can see the timing of these athletes pushing this 170-kilo sled over 50 meters. Kate O'Brien loads in so quickly into the back of the sled. You need to be very still going into that first kink. You see this exit here. She came out of the corner too early, bumped the right wall, sends her over too early into Gunther Sachs on the left.
You can hear the famous voice of our track announcer here, multi-linguist, and Astrid Radjanovic and Jana Pittman. Astrid married to Serbian driver, and sliding for Australia with Jana Pittman, a double 400-meter hurdles world champion on the back handles. Jana having only her 3rd ever race weekend in bobsleigh.
Shot of the very unique bobsleigh spikes allow them to dig into the ice to get that sled moving. See if she can be the first pilot to come clean through these kinks. You can see her correcting down the straightaway to try stay off the walls.
568 fraction quicker than the first heat, but again the skid is there, and the weight of the sled looks like they're trying to turn a little too early in the corner, maybe.
Yeah, that second kink has caused problems for every pilot so far in the field. Typically what happens is you can actually see in the track the runner marks. It makes these shiny runner marks in the track. It's from the sleds going down and breaking up the frost from the very cold morning, and that's also part of the reason why they're skidding.
Yeah, so they are polishing the ice. It's like sending a Zamboni down. It's getting slicker and slicker.
And the sun helps cause that problem as well. And you can see them having a harder time trying to keep the sled straight. She's having a bit of a bumpy second run here.
Yeah. But again, the tail breaking away more often.
She's only 100th of a second ahead of the Canadians. There's a chance that Jenny Cicchetti's going to move up 1 spot in this heat.
Well, she's been in front, behind, 139.1 quicker than the Canadians. So the Aussies will hold their position in front, and she skates across the line. So what are they finding here then? They're steering the sled in exactly the same position, but the ice is slicker, and so it's meandering all over the place.
Yeah, they had a lot more grip in the first run when the track was colder, a bit frosty. It gives the runners a bit more traction, and if you're even a little bit off with your steering, you're going to find the sled sideways or bumping into those walls, and we're seeing a lot more mistakes so far this heat.
So like a race car driver, you've got to maybe like a little slick of rain on the asphalt, and it's not giving the grip and the feel.
It's a very precise sport. You can see she comes off this corner. The back end is breaking a bit to the left. It sends her into the wall as she heads into Horseshoe. Again, same thing. The back end is skidding. You need to be parallel down these straightaways. This is a very smooth track. It's a 4-heat race. It's all about consistency.
Next up for Belgium, Elfie Willemsen and Hannah Marion. And Elfie, one of 2 women who was chosen to go and represent Belgium in the 2010 Winter Games. On the left in the red cap is their Latvian coach. And the Aussies there at the top. They support all the other small nations, being a small nation themselves.
This Belgium team had the 19th fastest start, so their disadvantage is definitely at the push. Nice straight line out of the first kink. She actually drove from her 19th ranked start all the way up to 16th place in the first heat, so she had a good first run, coming so close to that left wall.
But the first one that hasn't had a massive skid in several taps. Now, is that the coach looking at what others are doing and just warning the athletes? Can you take that on board?
I think as we get through this field, it's going towards the faster sleds. The more experienced pilots, they have a better feeling. They tend to be a little bit more precise with their steers. But we should see less and less mistakes as we get closer to the top 15 sleds.
700s in the lead for the first time. She is in the green over Astrid Janovic. 104.3 is better speed than the Aussie as well.
Bit of a high line in Shamrock, but she's cleaning it up in the bottom portion of the track. 1400s in the lead.
Well, she's already quicker than her first heat as well. Top speeds are rising. 139.7 and the same as this last run.
Brushing the wall into Portago and across the finish line.
Well, less contact with the wall. There's Astrid and Jana. Janis Millions, the coach.
She was about a quarter of a second faster than her first run. Nice second heat from the Belgian team, increasing her lead.
Well, that's the sort of step up in performance that we expect to see. She's a little more familiar, but also the speed is growing.
And she had a very good top portion of the track as well. Very high line in Horseshoe, very close to the roof. This is the main acceleration point of the bottom part of the track. It's a little bit too close to the roof for my liking, but...
It's a great feeling in a taxi bob or in a race bob here to get that big rush of acceleration downhill from the apex at the top of Horseshoe. But next up, we've got our two Russian competitors, nose to tail, Olga Stulneva, and following her, Anastasia Tambov-Seva, and there was just a few hundredths of a second between them. Olga Stulneva, a summer Olympian, 4x100-meter relay runner, took silver in Athens 2004, got recruited to bobsledding a couple of years later, just in the run-up to the Torino Games. So just 29 years old, and Helen Upton takes a long time to learn how to drive these tracks. She gets 6 runs in training. In the World Championships, she'll have a total of 10 trips down this track all up.
Yeah, the 6 runs of training are not a lot. It takes a long time to develop as a pilot. They say 4 years until you can start producing consistent heats in the races. Olga is a very good athlete, and I'm surprised by the Russian start times. They had the 19th fastest starts. I would expect so much more from a federation preparing to host the next Olympic Games in 12 months.
Well, what they're really lacking is they've got some quick girls on the front handles. They're lacking muscle at the back. They are lacking big power.
Big hit going through Nash Dixon. Nice and parallel into Horseshoe, so good correction from Olga.
Well, she's a quarter of a second up over the Belgians at the moment. So she's opening up the lead.
Parallel lines through this bottom portion of the track. We've got 4 right-hand corners in combination, and it's very important to have good transitions through here to get good bottom velocity.
That big hit has cost her. She's slower than the Belgians now. She's only just matching their pace. She will be in front at the line, but the gap was 33 hundredths down to 16. Coach Malcolm Lloyd not looking overjoyed with that one.
Now, the Russian Federation, from the women's side, is a little bit weak, and the men's program has had so much success. Abramovich, Zubkov, he's had a fantastic season in 4-man so far. You can see the frustration from the pilot.
Absolutely. Well, they only improved by 1/100th. The Belgians improved by nearly a quarter second on that run, so definitely not a good run from Olga, and she walks away.
You can see the top portion of the track. There's some small mistakes here. This is through Nash Dixon. She brushes the wall, sends the back end sideways. Bit of a late exit from Horseshoe. Too early into Telephone Corner. And this track, you can't afford to make mistakes here. It's a very smooth track.
Well, next up is Anastasia Tambov-Seva of Russia. She's got Ludmila Udobkina, another track and field athlete behind her. And 30-year-old Anastasia from Krasnoyarsk, 3rd in the Junior Worlds in 2008, just 2 years into her career as a bobsledder, but she's been sliding in luge for 6 seasons before that, and that's where Zubkov came from. That's what gave him the feel for the ice.
Yeah, she has definitely a good feeling as a pilot, but lacking from the start. They need to improve on their start times. Actually, I made a mistake on the first heat. Olga had the 12th fastest start, and this Russian team, Anastasia, the 19th fastest start. To be competitive in bobsleigh, you have to have a top 6 rank push. It's very hard to catch up in the track, even on a long track like this one. And you can see she's fallen behind from the push. Nice smooth lines, good line through horseshoe, very nice entry into telephone. She's pulled into the lead, great run so far.
1:04.9 is the best speed we've seen so far. She's quicker than her first run, 140.9 kilometers an hour first heat.
This is a great bottom portion of the track, really nice run. She was behind because of the start, she's pulled into the lead.
She's pretty much doubled her first heat advantage. She was 1700s up. In fact, she's nearly tripled it. Anastasia over Olga Stulneva, but Olga gave a bit of a rueful shrug there. She knows that she gave away too much.
Yeah, too many mistakes in the track. Anastasia's had the best run so far we've seen this heat, much better than her first run as well. Great, great effort. And now that's it until tomorrow. She gets to go home and reflect on her 2 heats and give it another shot tomorrow.
Pierre Luda's in the cap in the background.
This is where they lose it here, this Russian team. She was the 19th fastest ranked push on the first heat. They have no chance to really be competitive, being that far behind our leaders at the start.
It's like being in a drag race. You've got a small block and your rivals have got a big block. You're always going to struggle to catch up. Anastasia leads Olga, leads Elfie. They're our top 3. Next up at the top of the track is the USA sled of Jamie Grubel and Emily Azevedo. Jamie, a Cornell track athlete. Emily, former hurdler from UC Davis in the Susan G. Komen sled.
Emily Azevedo, a great brakeman, finished 5th at the Vancouver Olympics with Bree Schaff. Jamie, another young, inexperienced pilot, great athlete, nursing some injuries, a knee surgery last year, some back problems this season, working on her consistency as a pilot, a new pilot.
Now compare and contrast to the Russians that lead. Jamie, 4th quickest at the start in the first heat. Tambov-Seva, 19th. So you can clearly see that the athleticism is here. Jamie needs more time on ice.
Definitely. The American program is so competitive. They've probably got the strongest women's pushing program so far in the field this season, and I think they're going to continue to build on that heading into Sochi. Nice drive so far from Jamie. 1900s in the lead, 104.9, great velocity out of horseshoe.
Big result for her this season. Silver medal on the 68 Grenoble Olympic track at La Plagne. That was a real standout day in the 2-man
This is a much better run than her first run. She's going to be happy with this. A small mistake at the bottom. You can hear the sled whistling as it goes down the track, the Bodine sled.
Or is that the train in the valley? 1:39.4, top speed, exactly the same as in the first heat, but that was a quicker run. Again, Helen Upton, 0.2 of a second faster than the first heat. Some different mistakes, but essentially the track is allowing the sleds to run faster.
She lost a bit of time at the bottom, but she gave herself a good advantage. This was the fastest start so far we've seen. They are great athletes on this American program. She has a mistake here at the bottom. She loses a bit of velocity. Small skid, brush on the left wall, heading down the straightaway into Martineau.
See the athletes puffing and panting here. We're nearly 6,000 feet above sea level. The very rare air here makes everything a strain. Next up, Paula Walker of Great Britain with Jill Cook behind her. Paula, a junior world champion in women's bob, and Jill Cook braked Nikki Minicello to the World Championship gold 3 or 4 seasons ago. So plenty of experience on the back. Paula learning her trade originally from Blackburn in Lancashire. And one of the tallest athletes in the women's game. 12th after the first heat, and a couple of tenths away nearly from a top 10 run.
12th fastest at the start in the first heat, 12th fastest at the bottom. The start is so important. Mistake in the first kink. She's stuck on that right wall. You can't afford to make that mistake. And if you have a decent push time, you're going to lose your advantage.
Earlier in the season, these girls were among the top 3 or 4, 5 teams at the start. They seem to have just lost a little of that edge.
She's going to have a hard time picking up velocity through this top half of the track with those 2 mistakes out of the kink curves in the beginning.
She was just 100 in front of Jamie Grubel, the current leader from the first of our 4 heats. So she's got some digging to do here.
She was a little close to that right wall into horseshoe, very diagonal line into telephone. You lose a bit of your velocity. 104.8, it's not too bad. I would have expected a bit faster from her.
She's bringing it back. The gap's down to 0.04 of a second. Can she find the speed to beat the Bodine at the bottom of the track?
She's going to need really good velocity to move in front of Jamie Grubel. The gap is closing. It's only 0.02 of a second. This is going to be close.
The American sled. She should just dip in front of the line. She does. Literally 108.82 slide from Paula Walker. And again, exactly 0.2 of a second quicker.
She pulled it together in the bottom portion of the track. The kinks, she brushed the walls out of both the first and the second kink. It's really hard to regroup after a mistake like that. You can see she's headed straight, and all of a sudden the sled veers into the right-hand wall. She's trying to correct. Nice high line and horseshoe, very close to the roof. You can see the kinks are causing so many problems for these sleds. This is a bit of a diagonal transition. You want to see the sleds come more parallel out of horseshoe to keep the velocity.
So Paula Walker leads for Great Britain. 12th after the first heat. 11th was Christina Hengster of Austria, with brakewoman Inga Versen coming in late in the season. Only slid last weekend in Eagles, Austria for the first time this year, although she has previous season's experience.
Christina had a great first drive. They had the 16th fastest push and 11th at the bottom, so she picked up a lot of time in the track. Let's see if she can keep it straight through these kinks. A lot of pilots have had a lot of problems.
She's having to work hard. You can see the sled trying to wriggle free, and then the second kink, it does break away, and that's a nightmare.
You can watch the runners. The pilots are trying so hard to keep them straight coming through those corners, and the track is getting slipperier and slipperier with the sun and the temperatures warming up.
Well, listen, with our top half dozen sleds covered by barely 1/4 of a second, we could see some big changes in the top 6.
Very late entry into Nash. This run isn't as smooth as her first heat. 0.2 of a second back. She hasn't gained any time from the start deficit. There were a lot of mistakes going through into the wall corner at the top. She's going to have to be perfect at the bottom to catch up.
Well, she's slower than her first run, and the gap is way wide now. She's 0.3 behind Paula Walker. She was only 100th in front of her from the first heat. 140.4 is good speed, but nothing like enough to get her into the lead.
Yeah, the mistakes at the top of the track killed her. She couldn't make up the time in the bottom. It was just too many errors. She's going to be really disappointed with that run.
Well, you know, compared to her first run, that was a real disappointment, and that may play on her mind overnight.
She comes around the first kink, she's trying to correct, hits the left wall, sends her skidding into the right wall. You can't make mistakes like this and expect to be able to catch up to the field. It's very, very difficult.
She caught an unfortunate little lump in the wall that just kicked her sideways and pinballed her down the straight. It's Paula Walker of Great Britain that leads from Jamie Grubel of the USA. Anastasia Tambov-Seva of Russia lies third.
Die 2 Minuten laufen ab jetzt. Führer Großbritannien, Paula Walker, William Cook mit 2:17,84. Gleich dahinter auf Platz 2 USA, Grubel Esvido mit einem Rückstand von nur 500stel. Auf Platz 3 das russische Team Tambov-Seva und Dobkina, Rückstand 900stel. Auf Platz 4 Österreich, Christina Hengster, Inga Versen, Rückstand 34 Hundertstel. Platz 5 Stulmeva ist bei Lava, Rückstand 49 Hundertstel. Und Platz 6 das Team aus Belgien, Willemsen Marien, mit einem Rückstand von 65 Hundertstel. Platz 7 Australien, Platz 8 Kanada Ciocchetti, Platz 7 Australien Radjenovic, Platz 8 Kanada Ciocchetti Platz 3 Großbritannien Ole und Platz 10 Rumänien Konstantin. Noch eine Minute bis zum Start, 1 minute. In der Startboxe die Mannschaft mit der Startnummer 13, 10. Rang nach dem ersten Lauf. Es ist die Mannschaft aus den USA, nämlich Jasmin Fenlater und Eya Evans. In der Startboxe, ready to go, Jasmin Fenlater, Eya Evans, USA.
Top of the track in St. Moritz, fastest 10 athletes from the first of 4 heats in the Women's Bobsleigh World Championships. Jasmin Fenlater and Asia Evans for the USA up at the top of the track. I'm Martin Haven alongside me, Olympic silver medalist Helen Upperton. And Helen, these girls had a really good first heat.
Great load. Asia Evans is arguably the strongest brakeman in the field right now and brand new. It's her first season.
Better momentum than anybody else into the first corner, and Helen safely through the kink without squirrely sliding.
This is a great job from Jasmin. We've seen a lot of problems through the kinks from the previous pilots. She's doing a good job of keeping the sled straight and making the most of her start time.
Third quickest in the first heat. They sliced another 0.05 of a second off that. They know they can up the ante.
Jasmin having a really nice run so far. Nice and parallel lines off the walls. Great height in horseshoe. Great entry into telephone. You want to see the lines parallel and straight. And as the track gets warmer and the sun gets on it, the track gets slipperier and slipperier. We see more mistakes, and Jasmin is doing a phenomenal job on this second heat.
Well, took a bronze medal last week at the Eagles track in Austria. She was silver medalist in Lake Placid at the beginning of the season. Great speed at the bottom as well. This is a really nice looking run. Small
mistake heading into Martineau, but not enough to cause too much damage. A 7/10 lead.
Wow. Wow, listen, that's over half a second quicker than her first heat. That's not just the track.
No, that is a great run from Jasmin. You can see the excitement from these two athletes. That's the type of run she expected on the first heat.
Well, now she has suddenly thrown her hat into the ring as a potential top 6 finisher. That is a great run.
I expect to see Jasmin and Asia move up some spots. Look at this amazing, this is what you want. You want to be a few inches off the roof and a nice parallel slingshot line into telephone. This is where you build the velocity in the bottom part of the track, and you saw that with her time.
Well, fantastic stuff. Brian Scheimer, are you kidding me? That was a great run. They are in the leader's box as Fabienne Meyer of Switzerland with Elisabeth Graf behind her. On the right in the white cap, Eric Allard, former World Championship medalist for Switzerland as a bobsleigh driver himself, on this track as well. Hop Suisse indeed. Lots and lots of support for Swiss sliding this week. And this is the year that the region has launched itself as a candidate for the Winter Olympics in 2022. Twice an Olympic venue here, 28 and 48. Can you imagine it coming back in 2022 to this track as an Olympic venue?
We're looking at these pilots. She just managed to keep the sled off the wall, and in the first kink, the second kink couldn't quite do it. Correcting down the straightaway, trying to stay straight. And Fabienne has a bit of a start disadvantage. They had the 10th fastest push on the first heat. The most experienced pilot here on this track in Switzerland. Silver medal in the Whistler World Cup. She's expecting a big performance here.
Kind of ugly looking second heat though. She's in the red. That means she is behind 1200.
And not a good exit out of horseshoe. She was too close to that right wall. 104.1 kilometers an hour.
Jasmin had 105.8. That's a lifetime. And look at this. She'll be over half a second back at the finish.
You can see the numbers are still in the red. She's not gaining on our leaders so far. And Jasmin put such a good run down. She's
140, still a kilometre down.
She's going to be ducking to try get some hundreds.
Yeah, wow, nearly 4/10. Jasmine on the left, Asia Evans on the right. They're going to need to wrap up warm. They're going to be there for a while.
She's going to be disappointed, but we expected Jasmine to move up with a run like she had on that second heat. It was a spectacular, spectacular second run. A lot of pressure on these Swiss athletes having the World Championships at home. Lots of cowbell.
Yeah, and look.
This is the mistake. So many pilots have been making this. This could be the determining factors of our medalists going into the second day here. They got to stay off those walls. Again, a bit of a slide off of the sunny curve. She brushes the left wall into Nash. You don't expect to see mistakes like that from a home track athlete.
Absolutely, absolutely right. Well, next up is the reigning Swiss champion. This morning, Caroline Spani had the start and downtime record. No longer, I'm afraid. She was 8th in the first heat, former brakewoman. She's won 2 World Championship gold medals behind 2 different Swiss drivers in the Junior Worlds. She is now their #1 driver.
And I think part of the reason why she's moved ahead of Fabienne Meyer is the start advantage. She's got a slightly faster push time on average than her teammate Fabienne Meyer. And you can see her correcting the runners, trying to stay straight, a small tap, and this next kink is going to be so important. She's trying to stay away from the left wall, and she manages to do it. She's one of the few.
Well, she's in front of our leader now. She's not. She's squirreled away that lead over the American Jasmine Fenlater, and she's in the red.
Dropping behind, she's only 2 inches behind, but it's because of the start deficit. Asia Evans and Jasmine Fenlater had a great push time and great velocity heading down through those kinks and into wall corner. She's going to need to build as much velocity as she can out of horseshoe and through the bottom portion of the track. 106.3 kilometers an hour is the fastest speed we've seen so far today.
That is electrifyingly quick, and she's come back into the green. She is going to take the lead from Jasmine Fenlater. Will she be over 142 kilometers an hour?
Great lines in the bottom of the track. She's going to be fast down here, 140.8.
Slower than the American, so the gap will come down because it's uphill from here to the finish, and it's down to just 0.06 of a second. Eric Allard looks delighted that his girl has stayed in the lead, and actually I'm a little surprised Caroline Spani, not that much quicker than teammate Fabienne Meyer in the first heat, but a little bit more. She was just 500s behind Jasmine Fenlater in the second heat, and you can hear they feel a lot more excited about that.
So she had a small mistake out of the first kink and did a great job of recovering. Her start time is a bit better than her other Swiss teammate. It's still quite far off of our top pushing starters. This is the point that turned around the race for her so far. This exit speed of horseshoe was unbelievable, 106.3 kilometers an hour. It's the fastest. It's the fastest we've seen today.
Yes, absolutely, quicker than anybody in the first heat. And that again shows us that as the temperature comes up in the air and the sun gets on the ice, the track is warming up. Next up is our junior world champions, 23-year-old Miriam Wagner, 22-year-old Franziska Fritz, her brakewoman. Miriam is a heavy metal fan from Saxony, aren't they all? And a trainee policewoman. And Franziska, we're another athlete with a heptathlon-style hurdling track and field background.
Again, a big start deficit from the first heat, the 14th fastest push. They're going to have to be so clean through these kinks. Everybody's been having problems here. You can see her correcting down the straightaway. She's trying desperately to keep the runners straight. 53.4 is a good velocity, and she's maybe one of 2 pilots so far that has not touched a wall in those top 2 corners.
The other one was Jasmine Fenlater, so will this see her push her way further up the order as well?
So you can see right now she's in the red. She's behind Jasmine. She's behind the Swiss team. She's going to have to be perfect in the bottom of the track to try to catch up.
She's only 3rd place at the moment. There were very tiny gaps between the sleds. Not a high line through horseshoe, but a clean exit.
And she's tied. She's tied right now. She was 0-0. She doesn't have the same speed as the Swiss sled. The Swiss team had a great velocity out of horseshoe, and she should drop back.
Leads 141s down out into the final few corners. Doesn't have it. She will not catch the Swiss. It will be Caroline Spani that leads. Will she be second or third? Third it is, behind Jasmine Fenlater. Oh, says Christoph Langen, the coach, a man who, as a brakeman and a driver, knew no peer in his period of competition. Double world champion here in 2001, and he had a what was it, 0.8 of a second lead overnight in the four-man? I mean, he was just in a class of his own.
See the spikes on the shoes, allowing these athletes to power the sled. You want to see contact, that the runners keep contact with the ice. The brakemen are not supposed to lift the sled out of the grooves. She has a small mistake at the bottom of the track. She didn't have the same speed as the Swiss team, and she didn't have the same speed at the bottom as the Americans, and that's why she's fallen behind.
Wow, 700s covering the top 3 sleds at the moment, with our 6 fastest from Heat 1 still to come. Here is Esme Campus of the Netherlands with Judith Vis, and again, Judith on the back of this sled, really helping Esme, always in the top 6 at the start, and this season almost inevitably in the top 6 at the finish as well.
Again, the action seems to be, as soon as the athletes load, they come around this first kink, the track is getting more and more slick. They're having a very hard time staying straight. Esme is one of the more experienced pilots. She's had great races so far this year, a very good first run.
Great first corner momentum, as quick as Jasmine Fenlater.
And very nice clean lines heading into wall curve. Esme had some of the fastest splits in the track. She had medal rank splits in the track. She's going to want to try and have the same type of run she did in the first heat. Nice and clean, nice and parallel.
A look at the lead she's opening up over Caroline Spani. This is big for Esme Campus and the Netherlands. She has been on the fringes of greatness all season. She is the Dutch flying doctor. 1:05.5, that's almost as quick as we saw from anybody in the first heat, and quicker than she managed.
This is a great run so far. You can see she's still 3/10 in the lead. She's putting together an amazing heat. Small skid.
1:41.4 heat 1, 1:40.3, a whisker slower, and that's because of that skid.
It won't be enough to drop her back in placing, though. That was a great top portion of the track. Almost 0.3 of a second, still in the lead.
Caroline Spani and Jasmine Fenlater quicker on this run alone, but her first heat was so good, she stays in the lead.
And you mentioned this before, these World Championship races, it's 4 heats over 2 days. It's all about consistency. Esme had a good first run and put together another great second heat.
Look at that. Runners on the ice, and look how low the heels are from the brakewoman.
Yeah, great push technique, really good start times. You said they're always in the top 6. She doesn't finish her steer properly. She skids a little bit into the left wall, but nothing too big, and she had a pretty good speed.
Our top 3, Esme Campus of the Netherlands, from Caroline Spani of Switzerland and Jasmine Fenlater of the USA. Fastest 5 from the first of our 4 heats remain to go here, plus everybody outside the top 20. We're in St. Moritz, Switzerland. Martin Haven, Olympic silver medalist Helen Upperton alongside. And here's a woman who's been an Olympic and world champion, multiple world championships. Sandra Kyriasis claimed gold here on this track in 2007's Worlds, and won for the first time in nearly 2 years, just 1 week ago.
We should see less errors. These are our top 5 pilots, most experienced. These are our women's bobsleigh powerhouses coming down the track now. You mentioned Sandra Kyriasis won the World Championships here in 2007. She also had a top 3 rank push. She has fallen off at the start. The German program isn't as competitive at the push anymore, and that's where they're losing some of their medal potential results.
She is in the red now as she gets to Sunny. She has just crept in front of Esme Campus of the Netherlands. She was only 300 up on the Dutch girl in Heat 1.
Sandra Kyriasis is arguably one of the best pilots in the field right now. 10 years of domination in the sport. Mistake out of horseshoe.
Little quicker than her first heat, little quicker than the Dutch sled.
600s in the lead still. This bottom portion of the track, she's going to have to be perfect.
1:42.1 down at the bottom on the first run. 1:41.5, it's not as quick. Is Esme Campus perhaps going to challenge Sandra Kyriasis? 1400s is the difference between them as Kyriasis takes the lead. But again, you can see what a good run that was from Esme Campos with less experience by, come on, getting on for a decade than Sandra. Well, Sandra, you can always read like a book. When she's happy, when she's not, you can hear it quite clearly.
She's happy with that run. A great line in horseshoe. Brakeman tucked so low in the sled. She's too diagonal, though. You can see a rough entry. Yikes. Big hit, rough entry into telephone. You don't expect to see Sandra make mistakes like that in the track. And again, out of Martineau into Portago, brushing along that right wall, and not as fast of a speed as she had in the first run.
Well, nevertheless, she looks happy to be in the lead at the moment, with the fastest 4 sleds still to come, including her teammate Kathleen Martini, another former world champion for Germany. Stephanie Schneider behind her. These Saxony sled, the bright green of Saxony.
9th fastest push in the first heat. An amazing pilot. Martini won in Altenburg on her home track. 64 was their first push time, and they've improved it significantly. 53.5 kilometers an hour is a good velocity, and she's nice and straight and clean through these kinks. She's already pulled into the lead. We're going to see really good parallel lines, smooth driving from pilots as experienced as Kathleen Martini and Sandra Kyriasis. These two have been battling it out for years within the German program.
A little skiddy, you know, you can see even the very best, the tail is still trying to break away on this slick, icy track.
Much better transition from horseshoe to telephone than her teammate. 106.5, it's a great velocity.
Well, she was fastest there in the first heat at 105.8. That's nearly a full kilometre an hour quicker.
She's going to pull away from the rest of the field with a velocity that fast out of horseshoe.
Now she touched the wall here in the first heat. She's clean in the second. 141.5 to 142.3 is the difference.
Tapping the wall into Portago, ducks her head, new track record.
108 flat. Jawohl from Christoph Langen. Is that the first Jawohl of the morning? I think it may be. So we are now at a 68-second trip down the track, and we still have our fastest 3 women from the first heat to come.
She pulled away from her teammates, from the rest of the sleds in the field. She has a 2700ths advantage going into tomorrow's 2 heats.
And she was 4th in heat 1 from only a 9th best start. She still has the touch on the steering. Look at that, she's stoked.
You can see the athletes powering away here. The Germans trying to keep their starts as close to the top starters in the field. This was the fastest velocity out of horseshoe. She slingshots the sled into telephone. Great transition. 106.5 kilometers an hour, amazing velocity heading into the bottom portion of the track. That's where she pulled away.
30-year-old Kathleen Martini of Germany leads. Anja Schneider-Heinz, a 34-year-old policewoman from Erfurt near the Oberhof track. 3rd in the first heat off a 6th best start only from Schneider, and that's a surprise in itself.
It is. She used to be one of the fastest starting pilots in the field.
That's a 10th quicker, 5:52 to 5:62. That's a Schneider-Heinz start.
Exactly. Something must have happened in the first push for them to be that big of a difference. We don't usually see that big of an improvement.
Well, so much of the rhythm at the start, getting both athletes to start moving the sled, to break that inertia together, is reflected in the speed, and it looks like they had a better hit.
She has a 0.2 of a second advantage over her 2 teammates. Martini and Kyriasis have been the dominant force in the German bobsleigh program for years. Anja Schneider-Heinz has been trying to pull away as Germany won. 18th.
Wow!
18th hundredths ahead of her teammate, and 106.4, almost the same as Kathleen Martini. Amazing velocity out of horseshoe.
Well, she only had 105.4 in the first heat, but the top speed at the bottom, 142.2. She could go quicker again. Nice, smooth run from Schneider.
142.7. Great run from Anja. She's going to duck as she crosses the finish line.
Here we go, hits the wall, and it's still a 107.81.
She put together a great second heat and a huge improvement in the start.
Well, mixed emotions for Christoph Langman, the lead and a track record, but she hit the last corner. What's she thinking of? You know, your last mistake's always the one that you think of.
They're celebrating. That was a great run and a huge push.
Yeah, you know how tough it is to find a 10th. If the first start was great, they wouldn't have found that much.
We didn't expect to see a start like that in the first heat from Schneide. We expect to see a 52 push, and you can see these athletes, powerful athletes. Anja Schneider-Heinz was a gold medalist in Torino as a brakeman. She's a very strong pusher. 54.2 velocity going into those first few corners.
Massive momentum, and the start equal to the second quickest in the first heat. That's where she should be. There is Lisette Turner on the right and Anja Schneider-Heinz on the left. So the gauntlet has been thrown down for Alana Myers and Katie Ebeling. Started 5.5 flat. Fastest starters in Heat 1. Let's see if they can get the rhythm here.
They're going to need to drop this push into the 40s. I expect a 40s push from these two athletes.
New start record. Yes, it is a 48. Good call, Helen Upperton.
If she can stay straight and stay clean, she's going to make the most of that unbelievable start. They're the fastest starters in the field.
Runner tips did not waver. She knew she was good to go.
Alana had a great first run. She's one of the more inexperienced pilots, and she won a bronze medal at last year's World Championships, but it was on her home track. So for her to medal here in St. Moritz in a European track against these German teams that have so many more years of experience than her would be a spectacular result. Tap on the wall into horseshoe, but didn't affect her line. A really nice transition into telephone.
The gap is growing. 11 hundredths of a second. 106. Good speed, but not as good as the Germans. It'll come down a fraction.
6 hundredths of a second. The gap is closing slightly.
Needs 142 kilometers an hour. Just the tiniest tap. 141.7 is going to be very close, but will she be in front of Schneider-Heinz at the line? Needs a record. Doesn't get it. 107.94. Well, that is the second fastest heat. That was quicker than Kathleen Martini. She is 6 hundredths off the lead with just our first round leader to go. She is not down or out. She is right in there.
Yeah, and she has such a great advantage at the push. Tomorrow's two heats are going to be really exciting for this pilot. This is one of the biggest mistakes she made on this run, which was almost flawless. She brushes the wall into horseshoe, but she manages to keep her height as she goes through the corner, which is very important recovery. Nice line and a really good transition into telephone corner, but that tap going into horseshoe could have been where she lost those 6 hundredths of a second.
Well, that and a tiny rub on the wall down by the final speed trap, but Alana Myers from Gainesville, Georgia is still in the heat. Now our Olympic champion, Kaylee Humphries, just 27 years old. It's hard not to see her still competing in a decade from now, unless injury gets in the way. There's Schneide on the left, Lisette on the right. Our leaders, Kaylee Humphries and Chelsea Valois for Canada. Fastest sleds in the first heat.
Reigning world champion, reigning Olympic champion, only 2 hundredths of a second off Alana Myers and Katie Eberling. They're gonna 5:47. You don't expect to see somebody outstart the American team. I don't think anybody's done that all season. I think that goes to show the determination Kaylee has to defend her world championship title. Nice and straight through the kinks and into wall to make the most of that velocity and that push time.
Well, you know, the best time for Kaylee Humphries is when somebody has beaten her at something, because that's when she responds and digs deeper.
Small skid out of Sunny. This is where Alana Myers made the mistake into horseshoe. She tapped the left wall. Kaylee is straight. We need to see a velocity over 106, and she's not as fast as Alana Myers.
Well, it is Anja Schneider-Heinz of Germany who has the lead at the moment. Kaylee Humphries is a quarter second up. The gap was up to 3/10 before horseshoe. It'll be catastrophic mistakes that'll cost her the lead now. Surely 141.6 is not as quick as the Germans, but it's enough. The Eurotech sled heads into the overnight lead, but Anja Schneider-Heinz claws her way to second. Graham Richardson starts to breathe again.
Big hit out of the finish curve. Kaylee actually maintains a 12 hundredths lead. It was over Alana Myers. Now it's over Anja Schneider-Heinz, who's moved into the silver medal position.
And Alana in third place, 18 hundredths back. Anja was 1900s back in Heat 1, so the names have changed, but the gaps remain the same. And who's that in this sled? I haven't seen her riding with that. Hang on a minute, it's supposed to be 2 people in the sled. Well, it's not Pippi Longstocking, that's for sure.
This is an unbelievable start. They power the sled out, a new start record, the fastest push of the second heat. That's going to give Alana something to think about for tomorrow.
Yes, it is. And Kaylee and Chelsea Valois in her first year has never been off a bobsleigh podium.
Nice transition out of horseshoe, but a small mistake out of sunny curve in the top of the track and a big hit out of the finish curve could have been where Kaylee started to lose a little bit of time to the field.
There are the top 10 after 2 of 4 heats here in the Women's Bobsleigh World Championships in St. Moritz. Kaylee Humphries, the race leader, but we've got 2 more sleds to go. 21st starter is Misha McNeil, the 18-year-old from Consett, County Durham. She's already medalled in the Junior Worlds and the Youth Olympic Games for Great Britain. And for the first time this year, Nikki McSweeney, the 24-year-old from Aylesbury, behind her. Again, like the first run, very wavy down these slow first straights, Helen Upton, and that means that her hands are just moving fractionally on the D-rings.
She's very young, very inexperienced pilot with a lot of potential and talent, but you can see that in those mistakes she made. She's not used to this type of track, and this track in St. Moritz gets slipperier and slipperier as the sun comes out, more sleds go down the track, and they have a very hard time controlling it through those kinks.
Well, if you hold 2 fists together and put the knuckles side by side, a big steer is when the knuckles no longer overlap. A small steer is when they half overlap. So we are talking tiny fractions of movement.
Centimeters, and St. Moritz is a very minimal steering track. Mistakes cost a lot of time here. You want to be very straight, you want to stay off those walls.
Well, what she's trying to do now is break into the top 20 overnight if she can, and she does. She goes in front of Maria Constantin of Romania. Lee Johnson, the development coach, on the left. Last time the Worlds were here, he was driving the Great Britain men's bobsleigh. Now he's coaching the junior and the development squad, and he's got a lot of time for these girls. He said these girls really are going to develop.
Misha has so much. She has a great future ahead of her in the sport. She's a good athlete, a very talented pilot, and the reason why the top 20 is so important is she's trying to make the 4th heat tomorrow. Only 20 sleds will continue into the 4th heat.
If she starts in the 20 tonight, that's less pressure for the morning, right?
Exactly. You can see some small mistakes, a late exit off a horseshoe. You can, the inexperience is just showing with her, but this is a great opportunity. Her first World Championship event.
First time ever here in St. Moritz. And our final slide is Oana Gicanu of Romania, 23-year-old with 22-year-old Christine Spataru on the back handles. And like Misha McNeil and Nikki McSweeney, they too will be wanting to break into the top 20. If you're already in, all you've got to do is hold your position. If you're outside, you've got to bump somebody that's already been quicker than you on 2 runs.
And if they stay clean, they might be able to catch Misha. These girls have a start disadvantage. They have the 21st fastest start. It puts them way back to the rest of the field, where Misha McNeil is the 16th fastest pusher.
They've got a near 0.2 of a second deficit from the first heat to make up, and
late entry into snake.
And the sled was really snaking around there. That's where the corner gets its name.
Again, a young pilot, very big lack of experience compared to most of the athletes in this field. Most of the pilots have years and years of driving. Touches the roof.
That's what she did in the final training run yesterday, and then rolled it down through telephone. But no sturts today.
Still behind. Trying to move into the top 20 sleds to make the 4th heat tomorrow.
Well, at the moment, and a big skid there, she is behind her own teammate Maria Constantin as well. They will end up 21st and 22nd. 136 kilometers now. We're going to say that's slow. It's still 84.5 miles an hour in a bare sled on sheet ice. It's not slow by any other standard of judgment.
She's remaining in 22nd position. She's going to have her work cut out for her in the 3rd heat tomorrow.
Yep.
Trying to move into the top 20 to be able to complete this World Championship event. You can see her. She's going to tap the roof. The goal is to not panic. If you hit the roof in a bobsleigh, it's going to come down on its own. If you steer after you hit the roof, there's a good chance you're going to roll it out of the exit. We actually saw that mistake a few times this week in training.
Well, she did that, and then you get into the first element there at the bottom of telephone, and by that time you're skidding sideways, and the second just rolls you onto your heads, and it's a long, noisy, painful 3/4 of a mile to the finish line.
Especially when the only thing protecting your body from the ice is a thin layer of spandex.
Well, what more do you want? Come on, it's spandex, you know, it worked for John Bon Jovi. So after the first 2 of our 4 heats, Kaylee Humphries of Canada, the defending world champion and Olympic champion, leads, but it is a tight top 3. What has really happened is the remainder of the top 6 have stretched away by over a 1/4 of a second. Top 3 had really good runs, and there are the remaining positions. All 22 sleds go into heat 3 tomorrow, and then the fast 20 go into the final run. Let's get down to the finish area, catch up with our John Morgan.
2 heats of the Women's World Championships, and America's number 3 position. Ilana, you got to sleep. You got to sleep on this overnight.
Yeah, I definitely have to go to sleep, but and come in tomorrow fresh and just put 2 runs together and see what happens.
Obviously, you're in a good position. Have a good night's sleep. Good luck. And over here to Team Schneider-Heinz, a very good start in the second run.
Yeah, it was very better than the first time. The first start was not so good together, the feeling, and now it was perfect for us. And the first day is a good day.
Plus, you have the track record. Congratulations. Yes. Okay, then Team Humphries. Boy, did you two have a great start in the second run. Start record. Did you know that?
We did when we got to the bottom, so we've been really working on starts. We've got Alana and Katie that have really been pushing us, so it's, you know, we've got a challenge, but, you know, overall, great starts, good 2 consistent runs, and we'll see what happens tomorrow.
Ladies, enjoy your night in St. Moritz.
Well, they're going to have a quiet night out in St. Moritz with any luck, because there's a lot depending on what happens in the 3rd and 4th heats tomorrow. And you can catch all that action live online or wherever it is you are joining us. I'm delighted to say that Helen Upperton will be back, giving some sense to the words of wisdom in the deciding runs of our Women's World Championship. My thanks to you for joining us. Until we meet again for the final runs, I'm Martin Avon saying goodbye from St. Moritz.